Jacksonville Jaguars fans, welcome in to Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for being here Friday, November 28th, second show of the day for y'all. We will have bold predictions tomorrow morning. Jags obviously taking on the Titans. Right now, we're kind of taking a look around the Week 13 slate in the NFL. What Jaguars fans need to be rooting for? The Jaguars fans are in a tight wild card race right now. They're also in a very tight divisional race right now, with 6 weeks left, 6 games left, I should say, and just so much on the line. The Jaguars' internal goal this season has been to win the division. That is very, very much on the table. They control their own destiny in that regard. They also control their own destiny in the wild card. So they're in a spot that's pretty enviable compared to where you were at this point last year. There's no doubt about it. And we're just going to take a look around the slate this week and talk about who Jaguars fans should be rooting for in terms of the best interest of the Jaguars for the remainder of the 2025 season, and also talk about some potential playoff matchups, which can kind of impact who you're rooting for this week, different things. So really appreciate y'all being here. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. You can also check out GenJag.com, pick up some new Duval gear. We will be having a cyber sale starting tomorrow for Small Business Saturday through Monday. So keep an eye out for that. Now, the Jaguars, they obviously play the Titans this week. That's a must-win football game. Technically, if the Jaguars lose, they still control their own destiny, at least within the division. But you can't go losing to the Titans. The Titans have one win. They are not playing very good football overall right now. They are a team that, sure, there's a couple pieces to get excited about long-term. Cam Ward, Jeffrey Simmons, there's some Chimera Dike, but they're just not a complete team. They fired their coach. They're not winning football games. They don't do any one thing particularly well. All they're trying to do is just spoil your damn season right now. So Jags got to handle business there. You're rooting for the Jaguars to beat the Titans in Nashville and get to 8-4 on the season. Pretty darn good record. You look around the rest of the league. Yesterday, the only game that had major implications on the Jaguars and their playoffs is Cincinnati and Baltimore, and Cincinnati took down Baltimore. Really kind of wild to see the Ravens only score 14 points with Lamar Jackson against the Bengals, but that's exactly what happened. And so the Ravens, they fall out of first place in the AFC North. Steelers back into first place in the AFC North. They're the 4 seed right now. Kansas City losing to Dallas, I guess if you're talking about strength of victory, if the Jaguars get into a situation where them and the Colts or them and whoever has a tie record going into the postseason and you have seeding implications or maybe just making the postseason, strength of victory or strength of victory over common opponent, these are some of those tiebreakers that are down the list. So you would really, in one way, want to see the Chiefs win for that tiebreaker, but you also probably don't really want to see the Chiefs in the playoffs. If you're a Jaguars fan, you probably don't want to have to play against the Chiefs in the playoffs. I don't know. That's an interesting one. Just y'all can kind of make up your own assessment there, but that's the situation. Baltimore, you're now whoever comes in second place in the AFC North is competing for the wild card, right? That's where we're at this point, and I don't know if it's going to be the Steelers or if it's going to be the Ravens, because these teams, they're topsy-turvy. The Steelers are always just kind of a conundrum wrapped in a riddle. You're like, how are they winning games? How are they so competitive year in and year out with all the different issues they have? But Mike Tomlin having his team competing for the playoffs, that's just like written in stone somewhere. So the Ravens dropped to 10th, though, at 6-6 with that loss. The Steelers jump up to the 4 seed at 6-5. They play the Bills, and that's a huge game for both teams. The Bills are currently in the wild card. They're in second place in the AFC East. It's Buffalo at Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh needs to win that game. Needs to win that game to keep their kind of lead in the AFC North there. Buffalo, if they lose that game, they fall to 7-5. That's a big deal for them, because if they fall to 7-5, then they're opening the door up for the Texans to potentially jump them. And the Texans and the Colts game is the biggest game for Jaguars fans to watch this weekend, because if the Texans beat the Colts, the Jaguars and the Colts will have the same record entering their Week 14 showdown in Jacksonville. And not only would that give the Jaguars the opportunity to take the division lead, it would give them the opportunity to take a one-game division lead and own the tiebreaker against the Colts. Of course, they'll have to play the Colts again. So to own the tiebreaker outright against the Colts without having to go to like division record and conference record and all that stuff, the Jaguars would need to sweep them. But getting a game up on them would be huge. Absolutely. That would be, to go from sitting at 5-4 a couple weeks ago and the Colts up at, I believe they were 8-2 at that time, to then in like 3 weeks' time passing them would just be really remarkable. And the Colts, they are playing Daniel Jones, who, kudos to him for having a good year so far. They're playing Daniel Jones with a fractured fibula against the Texans' defensive front. That's a decision right there. That's a choice. So that's going to be wild to watch. I personally think the Jaguars fans should be rooting for the Texans in this game, because Houston, if you handle your business, Houston can't catch you, right? So to me, I'm thinking about not getting caught. I'm thinking about catching the team in front of me. I'm thinking about catching the Colts. I'm thinking about trying to get into first place in the division with a one-game lead following Week 14. That's where my mind is at. So I would like to see the Texans beat the Colts in that one. It's going to be a fascinating matchup. Texans defense is playing as well as any defense I've seen in a while. They're really freaking good. So makes the loss to the Texans a few weeks ago that much more disappointing because of how well the Jaguars played through 3/4 of that game, but it is what it is. Some other interesting games. San Francisco at Cleveland. Again, that could be a strength of victory thing and a tiebreaker where you would want San Francisco to win that game. They probably will win that game, but you never know. New Orleans at Miami. Don't think that has much implication for the Jaguars at all, although it is kind of interesting. Miami's playing some decent football lately. Atlanta at New York. Jets. The Jets are remaining on the Jaguars schedule, so just monitoring how they're performing post, getting rid of not all of them, but a couple huge superstars for them. And then also strength of victory could come into play later on down the road for the Jaguars. So I guess you would root for the Jets in that game. Arizona at Tampa Bay. This is a little petty, but I've been a little bit of a Bucs hater this year. I'm not going to lie to you. Just the amount of vitriol and venom spewed by Bucs fans, media towards Liam Cohen, all the comparisons with Trevor and Baker and all these different things. And yeah, it's turned me into a little bit of a Bucs hater this year. I'll just put that out there. Los Angeles Rams at Carolina Panthers. Jags beat the Panthers. They lost to the Rams. So I guess you would be rooting for the Panthers in that one. Although, good luck. You never know. The Panthers, they've been beating some teams. They really have. It's been kind of wild to see. Minnesota at Seattle. Doesn't really matter. I don't know if strength of loss ends up coming into play at all. You didn't play the Vikings. You lost to the Seahawks. Buffalo at Pittsburgh, we talked about. Las Vegas Raiders at Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are currently ahead of the Jaguars in the wild card standings because of that three-way tiebreaker where the Chargers have the best conference record between the Chargers, Jaguars, and Bills. All three teams are 7-4. So I guess you want them to lose to the Raiders. They're your competition right now. You want to get the highest possible seed you can, you would think. But then that affects, week playoff wild card, week one, who you're going to end up playing, the matchups, all that stuff. So it really is going to just be a wild finish here, it seems like. And then you have Denver at Washington, which you would imagine Denver would take care of business in that game and beat the Commanders. But you would like the Commanders to win. Denver is one of those teams. If the Jaguars end up getting into first place in the AFC South, Denver is one of those teams that would currently be ahead of them in the conference standings, in the playoff seeding. So if the Jags, we'll get into that in just 1 second. New York Giants at New England Patriots. Again, like Denver at Washington, you're rooting for Washington, and this one you're rooting for New York because the Patriots are up there in the AFC standings. So let's look at that. The Patriots are currently in first place at 10-2. It's going to be hard to catch them. Broncos are in second place at 9-2. Won't be easy to catch them, but you do play them. So that would, be a huge feather in your cap if you were able to beat the Broncos late in the season. That would help you potentially catch them. If the Jaguars jump the Colts after, their matchup next week, the Jaguars would be in third place in the AFC. They'll be ahead of the Steelers and Ravens because their records are, Steelers are 6-5, Ravens are 6-6. I guess if the Jaguars lose to the Titans and the Colts lose to the Texans, and then the Jaguars beat the Colts, they could be tied with the Steelers. So that's one possible outcome, one possible scenario, but I don't think that's a very likely scenario. I have the Jaguars beating the Titans this weekend, and I think they will. So yeah, probably would be in third place. And a couple games behind the Patriots and Broncos. But if the Patriots have a little bit of a slide, which seems unlikely with their remaining schedule, they play the Bills and the Ravens. Those are their really tough games. They play the Giants, Dolphins, and Jets. Are Bills and Ravens even all that tough right now? I don't know. Not playing their best football, that's for sure. It doesn't seem like the Patriots are about to go on a slide, but we've seen young teams fall apart at the end. When you look at the Broncos at 9-2, as we mentioned, they play the Commanders this week at Raiders. And then they do have a run here of versus Packers, versus Jaguars, at Chiefs. That could be a difficult run for the Broncos. And then they finish against the Chargers. Just keep the eyes on the Patriots and Broncos for sure, if you're a Jags fan, in my opinion, because there's a non-zero chance that the Jags could, if they win the AFC South, have higher than the 3 seed, have the 2 or the 1. Doesn't look likely, but it didn't look very likely that the Jaguars would have the opportunity to take a 1-game division lead potentially in week 14 just a couple weeks ago. And that's where we're potentially at moving forward. So that's kind of my look at the week 13 slate. Probably will start doing this just about every week in some form or fashion, just because there's some really interesting races going on, both in the wild card, the AFC South, and then also the division winners potential seeding in the AFC. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe, and y'all have a good one.